Hello, sixth graders. If you are at this video, that means you are getting ready to write your conclusion for our Compounds and Mixtures Investigation Lab. So if you do not have your lab pulled up yet, you can go ahead and do that now, which I have mine pulled up here, so I'm just going to keep going. So if we scroll down here to the bottom, this is going to be where you are going to write your conclusion. I want to point out that this down here, all of this is just kind of an outline of how we want you to write your outline with like the information that you needed. But you're not going to have it numbered and you're not going to have it in a bulleted list. We actually want you to write this in paragraph form. So you're not going to have the number 1 here, 2, 3, and 4, and so forth. So the first thing that you need to write in your conclusion would be an intro, which in this intro you need to restate the question of the lab and your prediction. So if you're wondering where that is at, if you scroll all the way back up to the top, our question was, what is the most cost-efficient and time-efficient way to clean up an oil spill? You need to restate that question, and then you also need to restate your prediction, which you guys should have listed right here. So if we go back down here, right here would be some sentence starters to kind of help you out by restating your question and your prediction. So in this lab, we were trying to figure out, and then you restate the question, and then my prediction was, and then you list your prediction that you created back up at the beginning of this document. The second thing that you need to include was whether or not your prediction was supported by the data or was it rejected by the data. So if your prediction was correct, you need to write, yes, my prediction was supported by the data because, and you need to use the data that you collected to kind of prove that your prediction was supported by the data. So if you think back to language arts, that when you're reading a text of some sort and you're trying to answer a question, you need to use the evidence from that text to support your answer in that question. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing here. So as you're writing if your prediction was correct or incorrect, you need to use the evidence, which would be the data that you collected in this lab, to support whether your prediction was correct or incorrect. And then the next thing that we need to add would be that you need to summarize what you did in the lab. So you're going to give a brief explanation of how you separated the oil and water. So if you are confused on where that is or what that actually means, this is when you're going to go back up to your procedures section. You should have your list of procedures, and you're just going to kind of give a brief explanation of those steps that you took on how you planned on separating the oil from the water. Then you also need to say, was your plan cost effective and was your plan time effective? And this is also where you need to insert your proof for both of those. So that's when you're going to insert your evidence, which would be your data that you collected to prove that your separation method was the most cost efficient and most time efficient. And then the fourth thing here, you need to talk a little bit about what happened during the lab that could have made your results unreliable. So what unreliable means, like kind of not dependable or it's not accurate. So was there something that went wrong in your lab that could have affected your final results? This would be where you need to note those actions that might have affected how your results ended up in the end. And then if you had to do this lab again, what would you do differently? Is there a way you could make your separation method more efficient? So if you did your experiment and you used all your money the first time and you didn't have enough money to kind of switch your method, would be where you want to put down what you wish you would have been able to do if you had more money to spend on the materials to help separate the oil from the water. And then the last thing that you're going to have to add would be a conclusion sentence. This is where you need to restate, again, whether or not your prediction was correct, make sure you restate your actual prediction while you're doing this. So you're going to say, yes, my prediction was correct. My prediction was that this, this, and this would happen. But make sure you restate what you put. But if your prediction was incorrect, you would also need to list what would be a new prediction that you would like to test. So if it was correct, the best way to separate oil from water is you would just put your prediction. If it was incorrect, you need to write our method of what your prediction was not the best to separate oil from water, and then my new prediction would be to test this in the future instead of what we did. So hopefully this kind of helps you guys form your conclusion. Just remember that you're going to be forming this in a paragraph form, and these bullet points here are just kind of sentence starters to help you get started. But when you get done, it should look like multiple paragraphs just put together, and then that would be your conclusion that you formed about this lab. And just make sure that you're using evidence from the lab to support your reasoning on why something was correct or incorrect, or why your experiment was cost efficient or time efficient. So at this time, you can go ahead and get started on step 1 of your intro by restating the question of the lab and your prediction. Hopefully this helped you a little bit better to understand what you should be doing right now.